The story of our modern world is one of corruption beyond salvation. Selfishness and greed tear their way through our culture as each last human clings to every morsel of wealth and material possession they can fit their arms around. And why shouldn't they? They're only acting on the same impulses that we all feel, after all. And in this meaningless space between eternities that we pathetically call life, what better thing is there to do? We might as well get all we can while we can, and milk this machine for every drop of consumable pleasure before it turns its terrifying head towards us and devours us along with the rest of eternity. Right? This is a terrible story. A story so harrowing that we can hardly pluck up the courage to face it. So why would you make this your story? Us modern folk call this story reality and then bury it deep down in the lowest parts of our soul, so that hopefully we don't have to dig it up again until we're much older. But at some point in the future, sure enough, we'll have to dig it up and face its terrible consequences. The truth is, we all live inside stories. They are so deep within us that we can't help but feel a sense of ancient knowing when a good story enters our mind. Stories are not primarily a form of entertainment. Stories are patterns of reality, encoded in symbols that are refined to perfection over millennia, as they pass through the great filter of the minds of the past. This process removes the unnecessary details and leaves us only the core patterns that intertwine us with reality itself. It's impossible not to live within a story. Even the most secular of atheists have a story at the core of their being, a story they have bought into to such a degree that it has become invisible and self-evident to them. The Big Bang, the science, the technological utopia, climate change, these are all stories. Stories that require a certain amount of faith, a certain number of presuppositions that without would simply collapse as narratives. We now live in an overwhelmingly material world. The predominant stories that possess us are the stories of the material, that describe the material world as objective, true, and independent of us as humans. Our eyes are akin to cameras that show us the material world as it truly is. We live in that material world, and any meaning that we find in it is simply a chemical byproduct that we might as well call delusion. This story denies the existence of anything not measurable, testable, or observable, apart from the Big Bang, of course, on which this whole story sits. The spiritual story is one of universal pattern. The structure of reality is fractal and scalable and saturated in meaning. Everything that happens is a particular that reflects the universal. We are pattern-based beings that are both able to perceive pattern as well as being made of pattern. This story embeds us in an ocean of infinite meaning, which gives purpose and direction to each moment of our lives. A good story is made of basic elements, for example, man, woman, tree, good, evil, etc. These elements are manifestations of yet more simple and fundamental patterns that make up higher levels of reality, such as male, female, family, order, chaos, etc. And they can also scale into more complex and particular patterns that make up lower levels of reality, such as attraction, kingdoms, and war. This scaling allows the person who lives inside the spiritual story to see the world all the way down to their individual day-to-day life and all the way up to God. The secular person's material story doesn't allow this. Scaling this story only means it gets further away in distance and time. Scale it all the way up and you get to the meaningless Big Bang that happened unfathomably long ago, uncomprehendibly far away. Likewise, you can scale this story all the way down and you get meaningless quarks that make up meaningless atoms. This isn't how we work. We can't build our lives around Big Bangs and atoms because they're not good enough stories. So they inevitably lead us to nihilism, which is the fruits of this secular worldview. Stories are much more real than we think. For example, you could say the Earth revolves around the Sun, which in one sense is true. If you were to somehow stand on the Sun, you would absolutely be able to see our Earth spiralling across the sky. However, it's more true to say the sun rises in the morning and sets in the evening. This is because one of these statements affects our lives in a very real way each and every day, whereas the other is absolutely irrelevant to 99.99999% of the people on Earth. I would argue that it's obviously true to say that the sun rises in the morning, because relevance is a factor in what is most true. When a TV physicist tells us that 500 million light years away there is a supernova so powerful it would destroy our entire galaxy in an instant, we should respond with, cool, and then forget it immediately, as the relevance of that statement is 0%. It's the same as saying, somewhere we can never go, this thing is happening on a scale we can never comprehend, which is the exact same statement as nothing. Take a biblical story for example, Cain and Abel. Here we have a story that didn't just happen once ago in a specific place. It's happening every day on every scale of reality. It happens within an individual, between families, and even between nations. This story is so real that it happens everywhere, all of the time. Alternatively, consider the grand narrative that emerges in the lives of those who are overly focused on the conspiratorial domain. Stories of corruption and conspiracy begin to link together in some all-encompassing grand narrative of despair and helplessness. This is not to say that conspiracy theories don't have anything true to say. In fact, a lot of the time, these stories of corruption and conspiracy are saturated in truth. But the tendency for all these stories to blend into a grand narrative just goes to show that that's what stories do, and if you choose one that isn't based in the highest truth, then a lower form of grand narrative begins to emerge in God's place. So here comes the pitch. You are a human that must embody a story. In fact, many stories that make up a collective grand narrative. And to do this, you need to know the story and act it out. You could just be an individual human in a meaningless universe, following the direction of your impulses and desires, until one day you return to the state of non-existence from whence you came. Now this is actually a surprisingly popular choice, and I urge you to resist this story at all costs. The alternative is to become a servant in the house of God, the creator of reality itself. You will deny yourself, first taking aim at the evil within you, and then your family, and then your community, then your nation, and finally the world. This is a war that needs to be fought not with swords or guns, but with kindness, decency, and love. This is the call to adventure that you probably believe didn't exist. Well, the good news is that it does exist, and you can become part of this story right now by joining your church and beginning to take part in the traditions of your own land, breaking God out of the Nietzschean tomb we have tried to hold him in. You have a unique value that no one else can offer. You need God, but just as importantly, God needs you. Life-altering moments don't come around very often, but I can truly say that this is the chance of a lifetime to make your life one entangled with the great narrative of God. Become part of the greatest story the universe has ever told and see where it takes you, and how much good you can achieve. For more videos like this, please feel free to subscribe to Unearthing Heaven, our YouTube channel. Please like the video, feel free to share it, and thank you for watching.